I returned home 3 days early to surprise my wife for Christmas. Instead of warm embraces, I found my son celebrating with his in-laws in my living room, while my wife sat outside crying alone. They thought I was still in Europe, unaware of their conspiracy to steal my $30 million estate. For weeks, they'd pressured my wife to sign transfer papers, breaking her spirit with psychological manipulation. But they never expected me to return early and overhear their entire plan. What I did by sunrise destroyed their lives completely and taught them that some betrayals have devastating consequences. Before I tell you what happened when those headlights cut through the darkness, drop a comment below. Where are you watching this story unfold? Are you Team Justice or Team Forgiveness? The headlights of my rental car cut through the December darkness as I wound up the familiar hillside road toward home. 3 weeks in Europe had felt like an eternity, but the early return was worth it. Christmas Eve was still hours away, and I could already picture Celeste's face when she saw me walk through the door. But as my estate came into view, something stopped me cold. Every window blazed with warm golden light. Christmas decorations I hadn't seen before sparkled across the vineyard terraces like fallen stars. The great room's French doors stood wide open, spilling laughter and music into the crisp Napa Valley night. This wasn't the quiet homecoming I'd expected. I paid the taxi driver and stood at the wrought iron gates, my leather suitcase forgotten at my feet. After 35 years of marriage, I knew every rhythm of this house, every pattern of Celeste's habits. She never entertained without telling me. She certainly never threw parties. The sound of champagne glasses clinking drifted down from the terrace, followed by voices I didn't immediately recognize. Male voices. Confident, entitled voices that seemed to fill every corner of my property. And then I saw her. Beneath our century-old oak, Celeste sat alone on the stone bench, shoulders slumped, in a posture I'd learned to recognize over decades. She was crying. My wife sat in solitude, wine glass trembling in her hands, while celebration echoed from inside our home. The contrast hit like a physical blow. Inside, people toasted something that apparently didn't include the woman who'd helped me build this $30 million empire. Outside, the woman I'd loved since we were young and broke wept beneath the tree where I'd proposed. I moved closer, staying in the olive tree's shadows. Voices from inside grew clearer. Finally, someone said, a woman's voice sharp with satisfaction. "About time," came a male response, authoritative. Then cutting through it all, I heard Philip's laugh. Not his usual uncertain chuckle, but something confident, almost triumphant. My son was celebrating while his mother sat alone in the cold tears streaming. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages explaining why strangers had transformed my home into their party. No warning that I'd return to find my wife isolated and my property occupied. The smart move would be walking through that front door demanding answers. The husband move would be going straight to Celeste. But instinct held me back. Those voices carried too much comfort, too much belonging. The laughter filled every corner like they owned the place. This wasn't spontaneous. This was orchestrated. I needed to understand what I was walking into. Why was my wife crying while my son celebrated? How had strangers made themselves so comfortable they'd forgotten the woman who helped build this place? December wine rustled through the vineyard, carrying the scent of winter earth, and something else changed. Ending's the moment before everything familiar falls away. I stepped deeper into the shadows. Whatever was happening here, I needed to understand it before I let them know I was home. My feet found the familiar stone pathway through our gardens. Each step brought me closer to answers I wasn't sure I wanted. The celebration inside had grown more animated, fueled by something beyond holiday cheer. The great room's French doors stood open to the December air. As I approached, individual voices separated from the noise like instruments tuning up. "Finally, we can move forward with the transfer papers." The woman's voice was crisp, confident, the tone of someone never told no. I didn't recognize it, but something made my jaw clench. $30 million sitting here while we pay Manhattan rent, came a male voice, older, authoritative. Absurd to wait decades for what should be ours now. I positioned myself behind the climbing jasmine covering the window trellis. Through winter bare vines, I could see into our living room where Celeste and I had celebrated every milestone of building Pierce Vineyards. 4 people sat around our coffee table, champagne flutes catching firelight. Philip occupied his usual spot, but everything else was wrong. Beside him sat Cordelia, his wife of 4 years, striking blonde, calculating. Across from them, the Fairmonts. Her parents, New York, money-old attitudes. Philip stopped being hesitant. Cordelia continued, manicured fingers drumming her glass. Your mother is vulnerable with your father traveling constantly, lonely, isolated. That makes her malleable. My son shifted uncomfortably but didn't contradict his wife. Reginald Fairmont leaned forward, silver hair catching light. She rattles around this enormous house like a ghost. She'd be happier somewhere smaller, more manageable. We'd help with the transition, Vivian Fairmont added, voice dripping false concern. Make sure she's comfortable in new arrangements. I pulled out my phone, hands steady despite building rage. The recording app opened silently. The key is making her believe it's her idea, Cordelia was saying, that she's being practical. Once she signs the transfer documents, the estate legally belongs to Philip. And what belongs to Philip? She raised her glass in mock toast. Belongs to his family. Reginald finished clinking glasses. Philip finally spoke, voice carrying weak protest. What if Dad objects when he returns? What if he realizes what we've done? Cordelia's laugh cut like winter air. Your father can object all he wants. Once papers are filed, once transfer is legal, there's nothing he can do. The house will be ours. Besides, Vivian settled deeper into our cushions. Michael's 62, not young in business years. He needs to step back, let the next generation take control. This just accelerates the inevitable. My phone captured every word, every casual dismissal of 35 years of marriage, every calculated move against the woman who'd stood beside me through droughts and recessions. Tomorrow morning, Cordelia continued like a general planning campaign. We present united front. Philip expresses concern about his mother's isolation. We offer solutions, alternatives. When she's emotional, grateful for our concern, we present the papers. Already prepared, Reginald confirmed, patting a leather portfolio. Everything legal binding. One signature and transition begins. December wind carried their words with perfect clarity through open windows. I had everything. Voices, names, specific plans, timeline. Evidence for any court. But more than that, I had clarity. For 4 years, I'd watched Philip grow distant, prioritizing Cordelia's demands over family. I'd attributed it to marriage evolution, natural boundary creation. I'd been wrong. This wasn't evolution, this was invasion. I stepped back, recording complete understanding, absolute. Celeste wasn't crying from loneliness. She'd been under siege, and I hadn't been here to defend her. That was about to change. The evidence was gathered. Now I had to get my wife to safety and show these people exactly what happened when they underestimated the man who'd built an empire from bare ground and fierce determination. The war they'd started was about to become very real. I circled through our olive grove, staying in shadows until I reached the oak where Celeste sat alone. Celeste! My voice was barely a whisper. She startled wineglass nearly slipping from trembling fingers. When she saw me, her face crumpled with relief. Justin, but you're not supposed to be back until... I know what they're doing. We're leaving. Now. She didn't question. After 35 years of partnership, she trusted completely. We moved through the garden's back paths, avoiding the great room's light, until we reached my car. 20 minutes later, we sat in the presidential suite at Auberge du Soleil. The irony wasn't lost, paying premium rates to hide from conspirators in my own home. Tell me everything. The story painted psychological warfare I'd never imagined. 3 weeks ago, Philip arrived with Cordelia and her parents for an extended holiday visit. The first week was normal, Celeste said, voice gaining strength. Then the comments started. This house is so big for just you. Wouldn't something smaller be more manageable? They made me feel selfish for keeping our home. The campaign escalated systematically. The Fairmonts positioned themselves as concerned in-laws full of suggestions about downsizing, about transferring assets for tax purposes. They had papers prepared, Justin, legal documents. They said you'd already approved the transfer that I just needed to sign. And when you refused, Cordelia said I was being stubborn, holding back Philip's future. Reginald talked about declining property values, how waiting could cost millions. They made me feel like a foolish old woman clinging to things I couldn't manage. I dialed a number memorized 20 years ago. Archibald Sterling's office. This is Justin Pierce. I need Archibald immediately. Emergency involving fraud and coercion. Triple rate, but I need documents tonight. 15 minutes later, Archibald Sterling's voice filled the suite through speakerphone. At 72, he was Napa Valley's most respected estate attorney. Justin, what's the situation? I played portions of the recording, outlined the conspiracy. Jesus Christ, how long do we have? They're pressuring her again tomorrow morning. Everything needs locked down legally before then. 2 hours, complete revocation of Philip's power of attorney, new will with ironclad language. Given circumstances, I recommend irrevocable trust with Celeste as sole trustee and beneficiary. And after, everything to charity. Philip gets nothing due to conspiracy and betrayal. I'll make the language bulletproof. While Archibald worked, I called Captain Morrison of the Sheriff's Department. Morrison, Captain Justin Pierce, reporting illegal occupation and attempted fraud at my estate. These are family members, Justin? Family members who entered under false pretenses, coercing my wife to sign fraudulent documents. I have recorded evidence. They need removal. I made a note to call our private banker first thing in the morning to freeze any large transactions. By 3 a.m., the framework was complete. Celeste now controlled everything Estate Vineyard's business accounts through unbreakable trust structure. Philip's inheritance zero with detailed conspiracy documentation as justification. Are you sure? Celeste asked, reviewing documents. He's still your son. He stopped being my son when he decided to see you as a target instead of his mother. I gathered the papers. Resolve. Absolute. Tomorrow they'll learn some battles shouldn't be started unless you're prepared to lose everything. The documents were filed electronically at 4 a.m. By sunrise, every legal protection would be in place. The conspirators sleeping in my house had no idea they'd already lost the war they'd started, but they were about to find out. Christmas Eve morning arrived with the crisp clarity that only December in Napa Valley could deliver. I stood at my own front door at 7 a.m. flanked by 2 patrol cars and Captain Morrison watching my breath form clouds in the cold air. The legal documents were filed. The trust was irrevocable. Celeste was protected. Now came the reckoning. I knocked with authority, not the gentle tap of a returning family member, but the firm demand of a property owner, backed by law enforcement. Movement inside, confused voices, footsteps on hardwood floors I'd installed with my own hands 30 years ago. The door opened to reveal Philip in wrinkled pajamas, hair-disheveled eyes squinting against the morning light. His gaze moved from me to Captain Morrison to the patrol cars, and I watched comprehension dawn like a slow sunrise. Dad, what's going on? Philip Anderson Pierce. Captain Morrison stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of official business. We're here regarding reports of illegal occupation and attempted fraud at this property. Illegal occupation? Philip's voice cracked. This is my parents' house. We're visiting for Christmas. Without the owner's permission, I said, my tone level controlled, and with documented evidence of coercion and conspiracy to commit fraud. Cordelia appeared behind Philip's silk robe, wrapped tight, her face a mask of fury and calculation. This is ridiculous. You can't just... I can. I pulled out my phone, played 30 seconds of their recorded conversation from the night before. Cordelia's own voice filled the morning air. Once she signs the transfer documents, the estate legally belongs to Philip. The color drained from her face. Here are the legal documents filed at 4 a.m. this morning. I handed Captain Morrison the portfolio Archibald had prepared. Irrevocable trust with my wife as sole beneficiary. Complete disinheritance of Philip Anderson Pierce due to conspiracy to defraud and betrayal of family trust. Reginald Fairmont pushed past his daughter and son-in-law silver hair immaculate despite the early hour, trying to reassert the authority that had served him in Manhattan boardrooms. Now see here, Michael. Let's discuss this like reasonable adults. Surely we can... There's nothing to discuss. My voice cut through his practiced charm like winter wind. You entered my property under false pretenses. You psychologically tortured my wife for 3 weeks. You prepared fraudulent documents and attempted to steal a $30 million estate through manipulation and coercion. Vivian Fairmont appeared, her face twisted with indignation. You're making a terrible mistake. We have rights. We have legal standing. You have 30 minutes to pack personal belongings and leave. I checked my watch, a gesture I'd perfected in decades of business negotiations. Anything left behind becomes property of the trust. You can't be serious, Cordelia hissed. Philip is your son. This is his inheritance. Philip forfeited his inheritance the moment he chose to conspire against his mother. I turned to Captain Morrison. Officer, please ensure they understand the legal ramifications of remaining on private property without permission. Folks, Morrison said, his tone professional but firm, you need to gather your things and vacate the premises. Any attempt to return without written permission from the property owner will result in arrest for trespassing. The next 25 minutes played out like a fever dream. Suitcases appeared hastily packed. Cordelia's parents moved with the stiff dignity of people unaccustomed to being told what they couldn't have. Philip wandered through rooms like a sleepwalker, occasionally stopping to touch furniture photographs. Memories of a childhood he'd just traded away for his wife's ambitions. "Dad," he said as they prepared to leave, his voice small, uncertain. "Can we talk about this? Can we—" "You made your choice, Philip. You chose Cordelia's greed over your mother's well-being. You chose conspiracy over family. Now you live with the consequences." I watched from the great room's windows as their cars disappeared down the valley road, police escort ensuring they reached the property boundaries. Only when the last vehicle vanished from sight did I make my final call. "Eugene Fletcher Locksmith Services. Eugene, it's Justin Pierce. I need every lock in my house changed. Every door, every entrance. And I need a complete security system installed, cameras, motion sensors, direct connection to the sheriff's department. When do you need it done?" "Now, today, before sunset." By evening, Pierce Vineyards was a fortress. New locks, new codes, new barriers between us and anyone who thought they could take what we'd built through manipulation and betrayal. I stood in the same spot where I'd discovered Celeste crying 12 hours earlier, but now the silence felt different. Not empty, but peaceful. Not abandoned, but protected. The house was secure. The legal protections were absolute. The conspirators were gone. But as I looked out over the vineyard we'd planted together, over the empire we'd built with our own hands and fierce determination, I knew the real work was just beginning. Protecting what we'd built was only the first step. Now came the harder task, healing what had been broken. January brought reports that filtered back through channels Philip never suspected I maintained. My son had found work, real work, not the kind handed to Pierce heirs through family connections. Philip had walked into Morrison & Associates, a small architectural firm with nothing but his portfolio, in desperation. He started at the bottom, drafting basic CAD work, coffee runs. "Shows up early, stays late, doesn't complain," my friend David Morrison told me over coffee. "Seems grateful for the grunt work." Grateful, a word I'd rarely associated with my son. By March, cracks in Philip's marriage became chasms. Cordelia, accustomed to Manhattan penthouses, found herself trapped in a 2-bedroom apartment where her husband's paycheck barely covered rent. "She's not adjusting," David reported. "Came by twice last week, demanding to know why Philip wasn't making more money, why he couldn't leverage his family name." Philip's response: "Said he was learning his craft the right way, wouldn't trade on a name he'd dishonored." The divorce papers were filed in June. Cordelia cited irreconcilable differences and incompatible lifestyle expectations. Translation: she'd married money and discovered she'd married a man who had to earn it. She moved back to New York, leaving Felix and Iris with Philip. "Need time to reassess priorities," she'd said. My grandchildren, whom I hadn't seen since that December night, were now full-time residents of their father's modest apartment. Philip worked 6 days a week, picked them up from school, helped with homework at a kitchen table. "Why don't we see Grandpa Justin anymore?" Felix had asked his school counselor. "Did we do something wrong?" Philip's answer, relayed through concerned friends: "Sometimes adults make serious mistakes with consequences lasting longer than we'd like. But that doesn't mean anyone stopped loving you." He was protecting them while teaching accountability, more wisdom than I'd seen in 32 years. The real test came 18 months later. Philip had worked up to junior project manager, earning respect through competence. A client impressed by his winery renovation design offered him a direct contract, a chance to go independent, with triple his current salary. Philip turned it down. "I'm not ready," he told David. "I need more experienced mentorship. I've spent years taking shortcuts, expecting things because of my last name. Won't make that mistake again." The humility impressed me more than any apology could have. This wasn't the Philip who'd married Cordelia, who'd expected inheritance rather than building legacy. This was a man learning to earn respect through merit. But was it genuine transformation or elaborate performance? I found myself driving past his apartment on Sundays, seeing him in the courtyard playground with Felix and Iris, teaching football on patchy grass instead of our manicured lawns. He looked tired, older, but there was purpose in his posture that hadn't existed before. 2 years had passed since that December night. 2 years of watching, gathering reports, trying to determine whether exile had taught the intended lessons. His humility impressed me. His dedication to his children moved me. His rejection of easy money suggested impossible growth. But questions remained. Was this authentic change, or was Philip playing a longer game? Had he learned genuine lessons, or simply learned to perform them better? Through my network of friends, I heard about his weekend trips to the library with the kids, his volunteer work, coaching Little League, his quiet reputation among neighbors as the single dad who always showed up. He's different, Justin, David told me during our 2-year anniversary coffee. Not just at work, the whole package. Like he finally figured out who he was supposed to be all along. People can change that much. Some can. Question is whether you believe it. I watched him from across the Oxbow Market one Saturday morning, Felix and Iris chattering beside him as they selected vegetables for what looked like a modest family dinner. He moved with patience I'd never seen, answered their questions with attention I'd never witnessed. This could be the real Philip, or it could be the most sophisticated manipulation he'd ever attempted. The 5 years I'd given him weren't up, but I was starting to wonder if the timeline mattered less than the question itself. Was I watching my son become the man I'd always hoped he could be? Or was I watching him become better at pretending to be that man? Only one way to find out. It was time for a test. 2 years after that December night, I decided to stop wondering and start knowing. The test I designed was elegant. Through shell company Meridian Development Group, I'd offer Philip his dream project, designing a luxury resort for a prestigious Napa Valley winery. I hired Marcus Webb, a business consultant, as intermediary. He believed he represented a wealthy East Coast investor. He had no idea he was conducting a character evaluation. Philip comes highly recommended, Marcus reported after their initial meeting. Morrison and Associates speaks highly of his work. His portfolio shows real talent. His availability, eager. This would be career-defining work. Perfect. Desperation and ambition were ideal conditions for testing integrity. The contract Archibald Sterling prepared was 90% fair industry standard language. The remaining 10% contained one crucial clause. Final payment of 40% of total fees is subject to client satisfaction, as determined solely by the undisclosed beneficial owner, whose approval may be withheld for any reason or no reason at said owner's complete discretion. Translation: I could refuse to pay Philip nearly half his fees simply because I felt like it. It was predatory language that desperate contractors sometimes accepted when they needed work badly. It was also the kind ethical professionals rejected, even losing lucrative projects. He wants time to review with his attorney, Marcus reported after presenting the contract. Never signs anything without legal counsel. Smart. But the real test would come when his lawyer explained what that clause meant. 3 days later, Marcus called with Philip's response. He has concerns about the satisfaction clause. Says it's too vague, needs objective criteria for final approval. Wants to know what specific deliverables trigger payment. And if we refuse modification, he won't sign. Says he'd rather lose the project than enter an agreement giving the client unlimited power to withhold payment without justification. I felt something I hadn't experienced in 2 years' pride in my son. The Philip who'd conspired with Cordelia would have signed immediately, desperate for money and confident he could charm his way out of problems. This Philip was protecting himself professionally, demanding fairness, even when it might cost him his biggest opportunity. Tell him we'll revise the clause, I instructed Marcus. Objective criteria, clear deliverables, fair terms. The client will negotiate. The client is impressed by his professionalism. The revised contract was signed within a week. Philip threw himself into the project with intensity that reminded me of my younger self, building the first Pierce Vineyard facility. Through Marcus, I received weekly progress reports. Philip exceeded expectations, delivering innovative solutions, balancing luxury with environmental responsibility. His designs incorporated landscape rather than dominating it. But technical competence wasn't what I was evaluating. I was watching for signs of the old Philip corner-cutting entitlement assumptions that connections could smooth over shortcomings. Instead, I saw meticulous attention to detail, collaboration with subcontractors, humility that sought input from structural engineers to landscape designers. He's different from most architects, the project manager reported. Usually they want to be the star. This guy wants everyone to succeed. Philip researched sustainable practices, studied the site's specific terroir, interviewed local craftsmen for authentic materials. His work ethic was impeccable, his standards uncompromising. But questions remained about motivation. Was this genuine transformation, or was he better at playing the role he thought I wanted? Was his professionalism authentic, or performance for an audience he suspected might be watching? 3 months in, I had my answer about Philip's character. The man who'd turned down an unfair contract, who worked with integrity even when no one was looking, who treated every team member with respect. This wasn't performance. This was who Philip had become. But I needed to be certain. I needed to look him in the eye, hear his voice, judge his sincerity directly. The project was nearly complete. The designs were exceptional. The test had been passed with flying colors. Now came the hardest part, revealing myself and discovering whether the son I'd been watching from a distance was ready to face the father he'd betrayed. It was time for a conversation that was 2 years overdue. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock at my office in the original Pierce Vineyards building. Philip arrived precisely on time, carrying his portfolio for what he believed was the Meridian Development Project. Mr. Pierce. He extended his hand with professional courtesy, learned through 2 years of real work. I'm looking forward to presenting the final designs. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where we'd discussed his allowance, his college plans, his wedding to Cordelia. Philip. I used his name deliberately, not son. I think you know why you're really here? Recognition dawned slowly. His eyes moved from my face to his portfolio on my desk. Understanding replaced confusion, and with it came genuine shame. You were the client. The whole project was... He set down his portfolio with trembling hands. You were testing me. For 3 months I watched you work. Watched you turn down an unfair contract, exceed expectations without cutting corners. Your integrity was unquestionable. Did I pass? Your work was exceptional. But we're not here to discuss your professional competence. I studied the man my son had become. We're here to talk about Christmas Eve 2 years ago when you conspired to steal from your mother. The words hit like physical blows. His shoulders sagged, and I saw not the confident architect, but the broken man who'd lost everything through his own choices. I understand what I did, he said quietly. Not just the conspiracy, but the betrayal. Making Mom feel like keeping her own home was selfish. I replay that night, constantly seeing her crying while we celebrated inside. And Cordelia, gone over a year, couldn't handle reality, said she'd married into the Pierce family, not married Philip Pierce, the struggling architect. When she realized those were different things, she left. The children, his composure cracked. They ask about you and Mom constantly. Felix wants to see the vineyard again. Iris draws pictures of the house. He looked directly at me. I tell them sometimes adults make mistakes so serious that fixing them takes years. That love doesn't disappear, but trust has to be rebuilt. The honesty moved me more than any apology could have. What do you want from this conversation? Nothing I don't deserve. He straightened, finding strength I'd never seen. I want to be your son again someday, if possible. Want my children to know their grandparents. But I know those things must be earned. I studied his face, looking for manipulation, for calculated charm. Instead, I saw exhaustion, humility, and something like wisdom. The will doesn't change, I said finally. Everything goes to your mother, and trust then charity. You inherit nothing permanently. I understand. Any reconnection happens slowly with conditions. You never mention money or inheritance. Never pressure your mother. One violation, it's over permanently. Agreed. You continue building your own life career legacy. Don't trade on the Pierce name or expect family connections. I wouldn't want them to. I believed him. Against every instinct, I believed him. I'll talk to Celeste. If she agrees, we might arrange a video call with Felix and Iris. Nothing more, not yet. Gratitude overwhelmed his eyes. That's more than I hoped for. Promises are words, Philip. Show me through sustained actions, through years of consistency, and maybe we can rebuild something real. He nodded, gathering his portfolio, however long it takes. As he reached the door, I called his name. Philip! He turned back. The Meridian designs really were exceptional. You've become the architect I always hoped you could be. Thank you. That means everything. After he left, I sat looking out over the vineyard that had defined my life's work. For the first time in 2 years, I felt something I'd thought was lost forever. Hope. Sunday afternoon light filtered through our great room windows as Celeste and I positioned ourselves before the laptop screen. 2.5 years had passed since we'd seen our grandchildren. The video call connected, revealing Philip's modest apartment, and there, flanked by their father, were Felix and Iris. At 7, they'd grown beyond the toddlers. We remembered Felix with Philip's serious eyes, but Celeste's gentle smile, Iris, with the pierced, stubborn chin and blonde curls. Kids, Philip said softly. "Do you remember Grandpa Justin and Grandma Celeste?" Felix nodded shyly. "From the pictures, but we haven't talked in a long time." "Today we get to talk," Celeste said, voice thick with emotion. "Tell me about school, your drawings, everything." For an hour we discussed first grade and art projects, favorite books, and playground adventures. The children chattered with unconscious joy, unaware that adult conflicts were supposed to define their world. Celeste cried happiness mixed with grief, for lost time, missed birthdays, unread bedtime stories. But she also laughed delighted by Iris's dramatic school play retelling and Felix's careful caterpillar to butterfly explanation. Philip remained in the background, facilitating but never pushing, never demanding more than freely given. His gratitude was evident in every gesture, every boundary he respected. Those monthly video calls became our new normal. Slowly, cautiously, we rebuilt something resembling family. 6 months later came their first visit. Hotel stays, day visits, only strict parameters. But for those precious hours, our estate came alive with children's laughter again. I watched Felix chase butterflies through vineyard rows while Iris helped Celeste tend her herb garden. Philip sat on the terrace where his mother had once cried alone, now watching his children discover the place he'd nearly lost. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving them this, for giving us this chance. You earned it. Every day for 2.5 years you earned it." The healing continued gradually. More visits, longer stays, tentative steps toward family again. Philip never overstepped, never presumed, never took growing trust for granted. 5 years after that Christmas Eve confrontation, Philip had established himself as one of Napa Valley's most respected architects. His designs graced wineries throughout Northern California, each project testament to work ethic and integrity developed through necessity. Our relationship had evolved, though it would never be what it once was. We'd all been changed, scarred, but strengthened, cautious but capable of genuine affection. Felix and Iris now spend every other weekend with us. They knew their father's story in age-appropriate terms, understood that actions have consequences, that trust must be earned and maintained. "Why did Daddy have to go away for so long?" Iris had asked during one visit. "Sometimes people make choices that hurt those they love," Celeste explained. "When that happens, it takes time to heal the hurt and rebuild the love. But you still loved him. We never stopped loving him. But love isn't always enough by itself. Respect has to be earned." A lesson I hoped they'd carry forward, that love without boundaries isn't love, but enablement. That true family bonds are forged through mutual respect, not automatic entitlement. Standing in my vineyard at sunset, watching my son teach his children to identify grape varieties, I reflected on our journey. The pain had been necessary, the separation essential, the slow reconciliation worth every careful step. Some called what I'd done harsh. Others called it justice. I called it love, the kind that refuses to enable destruction, that demands growth, even when growth is painful. The boy who'd conspired against his mother had become a man who protected his children from adult conflicts while teaching them accountability. The son who'd expected inheritance had learned to build his own legacy. The husband who'd chosen his wife's greed over his family's well-being had chosen differently when it mattered most. Not everyone gets a second chance. Fewer still have the courage to take it when it's offered. Philip had taken his chance and transformed it into something worthy of respect. Not because he was my son, but because he'd earned the right to be called my son again. True love sometimes requires toughness. Real protection sometimes requires distance. And genuine family is built on earned respect, not inherited obligation. The greatest gift you can give someone isn't catching them when they fall. It's helping them learn to catch themselves. Then being there to celebrate when they finally do. That's what family really means. Not the people who enable your worst impulses, but the people who demand your best self, even when, especially when demanding it hurts. Sometimes the hardest lesson is the most important one, that love worth having is love worth earning every single day. If you're listening to this story, I want you to understand something fundamental about family and forgiveness. God gave us the strength to love, but He also gave us the wisdom to know when love requires boundaries. Through His grace, we learned that enabling someone's destructive behavior isn't love, it's harm disguised as kindness. This true story taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you do is say no to someone you care about deeply. When Philip conspired against Celeste, I could have looked the other way, made excuses, protected him from consequences. But God's guidance showed me a different path, one that demanded accountability alongside affection. Real grandpa stories aren't always about spoiling grandchildren or giving endless second chances. Sometimes they're about teaching hard lessons that shape character for generations. Felix and Iris learned that respect is earned, that actions have weight, that family bonds grow stronger when built on truth rather than obligation. The vineyard we protected became more than property. It became a symbol of values worth defending. Every grape we harvest reminds us that the best things in life require patience, proper conditions, and careful tending. This true story proves that redemption is possible, but only when paired with genuine change. Through God's mercy, we found our way back to each other, not as we were, but as we were meant to be. These grandpa stories matter because they show that love and justice can coexist, that families can heal, and that sometimes the greatest gift is teaching someone to stand on their own. What's your story of tough love paying off? Share it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life wisdom that reminds us all what truly matters. My son and daughter-in-law were stealing everything I owned while I was supposed to be out of town. But when my flight got canceled, I caught them red-handed, with crowbars breaking into my basement. A moving truck sat in my driveway loaded with my late wife's most precious belongings. "Dad, didn't you say you'd be in Houston for a few days?" Nathan stammered, his face going white. They thought the old man would never fight back, but they had no idea I was about to destroy their lives with one phone call. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment and let me know. Where are you watching this story from? I want to know how far this tale of family betrayal has traveled. The flight to Houston had been nothing but turbulence and delays, so when they finally announced the cancellation over the intercom, I wasn't even surprised, just disappointed. My old friend Jake had been looking forward to our weekend catching up, reminiscing about our construction days back in the 80s. But sometimes, life has other plans. The cab ride back felt longer than usual, my mind already shifting to the quiet evening ahead. As we turned onto Maple Street, something immediately caught my eye. A massive white moving truck sat parked in my driveway, its rear door hanging wide open. I hadn't called any movers. Hell, I hadn't even thought about moving since Maria passed 3 years ago. "Drop me here," I told the driver, handing him a 20. My contractor instincts were screaming. Something was very wrong. I approached my ranch house slowly, the afternoon Texas sun beating down. The truck's engine was still warm. Whoever was here wasn't expecting me back. That's when I heard it. Metal scraping against metal coming from the side of the house. I crept along the path beside Maria's azalea bushes, following the sound to my basement entrance. What I saw next made my blood run cold. There, kneeling by my basement door with crowbars in their hands, were my son Nathan and my daughter-in-law Courtney. They were working frantically at the lock. The same lock I'd changed just last week because I'd had this nagging feeling someone had been in my house. What the hell is going on at my house? Nathan's head snapped up and I watched the color drain from his face like water from a broken pipe. The crowbar clattered from his hands onto the concrete steps. "Dad," he scrambled to his feet, nearly tripping. "Dad, didn't you say you'd be in Houston for a few days?" Courtney stood more slowly still, gripping her crowbar eyes, darting between the truck and me like a cornered animal. "A few days." My voice rose with each word. "What does that have to do with you breaking into my basement?" Nathan's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. 38 years old, and he looked like the scared kid who'd broken my workshop window 25 years ago. But this wasn't a broken window. This was my son trying to break into my basement with tools I'd taught him to use. "We can explain, Dad," Nathan finally managed, his voice cracking. "You better start explaining fast." I stepped closer, noticing the sweat stains on their shirts, the dirt under their fingernails, the way Courtney kept glancing at that moving truck like it held secrets. The pieces clicked together with the precision of a well-built frame. The new lock I'd installed. The feeling that things had been moved in my house. Nathan's casual questions about my insurance policies during recent conversations. This wasn't desperation. This was planned, calculated. My own son was robbing me. Something told me this was just the beginning of a nightmare I never could have imagined. The metallic taste of fear filled my mouth as I walked toward that truck, each step feeling heavier than the last. My work boots crunched on the gravel driveway, and I could hear Nathan and Courtney whispering frantically behind me. "Dad, wait, please don't," Nathan called out, but I was already at the truck's rear bumper. "Don't what?" "Don't look at what you've stolen from my own house." I grabbed the truck's metal frame and hauled myself up into the cargo area. The sight that greeted me knocked the wind right out of my lungs. There, carefully wrapped in moving blankets, was Maria's antique dining room set, the mahogany table and 6 chairs we'd saved up for during our first year of marriage. I'd worked double shifts for 3 months, just so we could afford that set from the estate sale downtown. Jesus Christ, I whispered, pulling away more blankets. My vintage tool collection sat in neat rows, hand planes from the 1940s, my grandfather's chisels, the level that had been with me on every job site for 30 years. These weren't just tools, they were extensions of my hands, each one worn smooth by decades of honest work. We were just storing them temporarily, Nathan said from the ground, his voice desperate. You thought what? I spun around to face him. You thought you'd help yourselves to everything I've worked for. Courtney stepped forward, her real estate smile plastered on her face. Bradley, you have to understand we were trying to protect these things. The house has been sitting empty so much. Empty, I live here. This is my home. I turned back to the truck's contents, my heart sinking deeper with each discovery. Maria's jewelry box, the one I'd made her in my workshop for our 10th anniversary. Her china set, the delicate blue and white pattern she'd only brought out for holidays. Then I saw it and my knees nearly buckled. Maria's hope chest. She'd kept it at the foot of our bed for 42 years. Filled with letters I'd written her during my Navy deployment photos from our honeymoon. The baby blanket she'd knitted for the children we never had. After she died, I'd moved it to the living room where I could see it every morning with my coffee. You sons of bitches touched Maria's hope chest. My voice came out so quiet, I barely recognized it as my own. Nathan's face crumpled. Dad, you needed... I jumped down from the truck landing harder than my 65-year-old knees appreciated. You needed to rifle through your dead mother's most precious belongings. The neighborhood was starting to take notice now. Mrs. Henderson from across the street was clearly watching our drama unfold. It's not what it looks like, Courtney said, but her voice lacked conviction. Then tell me what it looks like, I said, stepping closer to both of them. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my son and daughter-in-law have been treating my home like their personal warehouse. Nathan couldn't meet my eyes. Sweat was beading on his forehead and his hands were shaking. These weren't the steady hands I'd taught to swing a hammer and read a level. How many times, I asked, my voice getting quieter and more dangerous with each word. How many times have you been in my house without permission? The silence stretched between us like a taut wire ready to snap. Nathan wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans, that familiar gesture he'd done since he was a kid caught in a lie. Dad, look, we were moving things for the renovation project, remember? You said we could store stuff in the truck while we worked on the house. I stared at him like he'd just spoken in a foreign language. Renovation project? Yeah, the bathroom remodel we talked about, and the kitchen updates. His voice was gaining confidence, like he was convincing himself as much as me. We needed to clear out rooms so we could work properly. Courtney nodded eagerly. That's right. We were just being careful with your belongings, making sure nothing got damaged during construction. For a moment, I almost wanted to believe them. Almost. But 40 years in construction had taught me to spot a lie faster than a crooked wall, and this story had more holes than a piece of Swiss cheese. Show me, I said simply. What? Show me this renovation work you've been doing. I started walking toward the house. Let's take a tour of all this progress you've been making with my $8,000. I saw Nathan and Courtney exchange a look, the kind of panicked glance that passes between co-conspirators when their plan starts falling apart. We walked through my front door, and immediately I could see the house through new eyes. The bathroom Nathan claimed to be remodeling looked exactly the same as it had 2 months ago. Same cracked tile around the tub, same leaky faucet I'd been meaning to fix, same medicine cabinet that stuck when you tried to close it. Where's the new vanity you said you ordered? I asked, running my hand along the chipped countertop. It's back-ordered, Nathan stammered. Supply chain issues, you know how it is. Uh-huh. I moved to the kitchen. And the new cabinets? The kitchen was untouched. Same scratched laminate counters, same cabinet doors that hung slightly crooked, same everything. No signs of demolition, no construction dust, no tools, no materials. Nothing. Those are delayed too, Courtney chimed in. Everything's delayed these days. I walked over to the kitchen trash can and started pulling out receipts I'd noticed earlier, but hadn't thought much about. Home Depot receipts, lots of them dating back 2 months. My contractor brain automatically started calculating the materials. Listed 2x4s drywall, tile, plumbing fixtures, electrical components. A funny thing about these receipts. I said, spreading them out on the kitchen counter like evidence in a courtroom. Says here you bought $1,200 worth of tile on March 15th. Where is it? Nathan's face was turning red. We returned some stuff, changed our minds about the design. I pulled out my phone and called the Home Depot customer service number printed on one of the receipts. Nathan watched in horror as I navigated through the automated system. Hi, I need to check on some returns made on this account, I said when a human finally answered. I read off the receipt number and waited. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. Even Courtney had stopped trying to look confident. I see, I said to the customer service rep. So these items were returned the same day they were purchased for cash. Thank you. I hung up and looked at my son, really looked at him. The Nathan I'd raised would never have been able to maintain eye contact during a lie this big, and sure enough, he was staring at his boots. $8,000, I said quietly. $8,000 of materials that you bought and returned the same day, every single time. Dad, I can explain. You've been running a scam on me for 2 months. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. Taking my money, buying materials, returning them for cash, and telling me it was all for home improvements that never happened. Nathan's shoulders sagged like a building with a broken foundation. We were desperate, Dad. We needed... If you could lie about this for months, what else have you been hiding? Bradley, everything all right over there? I turned to see Walter Hoffman crossing the street, his weathered face creased with concern. Even at 63, Walter still moved with the purposeful stride of the Austin police detective he'd been for 30 years before retirement. His sharp eyes were already taking in the scene, the moving truck, Nathan and Courtney looking guilty as hell, and me probably looking like I'd aged 10 years. Walter, thank God, I said, genuinely relieved. I could use a witness right about now. Walter's cop instincts kicked in immediately. He glanced at the truck, then at Nathan and Courtney, then back at me. Moving Day thought you weren't planning to sell anytime soon. I'm not moving anywhere, I said firmly. But apparently my son and daughter-in-law thought they'd help themselves to my belongings while I was supposed to be out of town. Walter's expression hardened. Want to tell me what's going on here, folks? Nathan opened his mouth probably to spin another lie, but I cut him off. Walter, would you mind sticking around? I have a feeling this is bigger than just today. Not a problem. Walter positioned himself where he could see both Nathan and Courtney clearly. Been wondering about that truck myself. I felt grateful for this man who'd been my neighbor for 15 years, who'd checked on me regularly after Maria passed. Having him here made me feel less alone. Let's take a look inside, I suggested. See if we can figure out how long this has been going on. Walter immediately started examining things with a trained eye. He ran his fingers along door frames, checked locks, looked at details most people would miss. This lock on your file cabinet, Walter said, kneeling beside my desk. It's been picked. See these scratches around the keyhole. This wasn't done today. My stomach dropped. The file cabinet contained important documents, insurance papers, property deeds, financial records. How long ago? I asked. Walter examined the scratches more closely. These marks have had time to oxidize. I guess at least a few weeks, maybe longer. We continued through the house and Walter pointed out other signs I'd missed. Scuff marks on hardwood floors where heavy items had been dragged. Dust patterns on shelves where objects had been moved and replaced, but not quite right. The subtle signs of a house that had been systematically gone through. Bradley, Walter said quietly, how often have you been leaving the house lately? I thought about it. More often since Maria died. Grocery shopping, doctor appointments, weekly poker at the VFW. And Nathan knew your schedule. The pieces were falling into place. He's been asking lots of questions lately. When I had appointments, if I was planning trips, I thought he was just being caring. Walter nodded grimly. Classic pattern. They've been watching your routine timing their visits for when you'd be gone. I felt sick. This wasn't desperate spur-of-the-moment theft. This was calculated, methodical. My own son had been treating my home like his personal storage facility for months. There's more, Walter said, examining my bedroom window. This lock's been tampered with, too. They weren't just using a key, they had multiple ways in. The systematic nature of it hit me like a sledgehammer. Every time I'd felt like something was out of place, every moment I'd questioned my memory. It had all been real. I had a terrible feeling we were about to discover something much worse. Standing in my study, staring at that picked file cabinet lock, I felt my hands start to shake. Not from fear, from rage. If they'd been going through my personal documents, There was no telling what kind of damage they might have done. "Walter, I need to make some calls," I said, reaching for my phone with fingers that felt clumsy and thick. My lawyer, Jim Patterson, had handled Maria's estate and our wills. He'd know if anyone had been asking questions about my property. "Jim, it's Bradley Pierce," I said when he answered. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Has anyone contacted your office asking about my house or any refinancing options?" There was a pause that made my stomach clench. "Actually, yes. About 3 weeks ago, someone called claiming to represent you. Asked about the process for a home equity loan, what documentation would be needed." "Someone claiming to represent me?" My voice came out strangled. "I never authorized anyone to call you." "I thought it was odd," Jim admitted. "The person knew quite a bit about your financial situation, but something felt off. I told them you'd need to contact me directly." I hung up and immediately dialed my bank. Walter watched me, his cop face grim, as he listened to my half of the conversation. "This is Bradley Pierce. I need to know if anyone has run a credit check on my account recently without my authorization." The customer service representative put me on hold. Those 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. "Mr. Pierce, yes. There was a credit inquiry made 2 weeks ago for a potential home equity line of credit. The inquiry came from Lone Star Mortgage Solutions." "I never applied for any mortgage," I said, my voice getting louder. "I never even heard of Lone Star Mortgage Solutions." Walter was already pulling out his own phone, typing something. He showed me the screen. Lone Star Mortgage Solutions had a website, but it looked cheap thrown together. The kind of operation that specialized in quick deals and didn't ask too many questions. I hung up and went straight to my file cabinet, pulling out the drawer that held my most important documents. The folder where I kept copies of my house deed was there, but it felt thin. Too thin. "The photocopies are gone," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "The insurance papers, the property survey, even the appraisal I had done last year." Walter came over and looked at the folder with me. "They took everything they'd need to forge a mortgage application. But how would they forge my signature? Courtney's in real estate, right?" Walter asked. "She'd know exactly what documents are needed, what the process looks like. And she'd have connections. Mortgage brokers, notaries, people who might be willing to cut corners for the right price." I thought about all those times Nathan had been in my study during the fake renovation project. All those opportunities to go through my files, photograph documents, copy signatures from old contracts. They weren't just planning to steal my belongings. I said, the full scope of their betrayal hitting me like a physical blow. They were planning to steal my house. Walter nodded grimly. "Home equity scam. They'd take out a loan against your property, pocket the money, and disappear. By the time you found out, they'd be long gone, and you'd be stuck with a mortgage you never signed for." I sank into my desk chair, feeling every one of my 65 years. Maria and I had worked 30 years to pay off this house. It was our legacy, our security, the one thing I had left of the life we'd built together. How much could they have gotten? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. House like this in this neighborhood? "Probably 200 and maybe 300,000, Walter said. "Enough to disappear and start over somewhere else." They didn't just want my belongings. They wanted my entire life. The walk back to my front yard felt like a death march. Walter stayed close beside me, his presence steadying me for what I knew would be the hardest conversation of my life. Nathan and Courtney were still standing by the truck, whispering urgently to each other, but they stopped when they saw our faces. "We need to talk," I said, my voice carrying the authority of a man who'd spent 40 years managing construction crews. "All of us, inside, now." In my living room, I sat in Maria's favorite chair, the blue recliner where she'd spent her last months reading mystery novels and watching birds at the feeder outside our window. Nathan and Courtney took the couch while Walter positioned himself by the door like the cop he'd once been. "I'm gonna lay this out for you." I began pulling out the file folder I'd grabbed from my study. "And I want the truth. No more lies, no more excuses." I opened the folder and spread the evidence across my coffee table like a prosecutor presenting a case. First, the fake renovation scam. $8,000 of materials purchased and returned for cash. Over 2 months. I have the receipts, the return confirmations, everything. Nathan couldn't meet my eyes, but Courtney was staring at me with something that looked almost like defiance. Second, systematic theft from my home. Months of break-ins, stolen property loaded into that truck outside. My lawyer estimates the value at $15,000 minimum. "Dad," Nathan started, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. Third, identity theft and attempted mortgage fraud. Someone used my personal information to inquire about refinancing my house, a house that's been paid off for 5 years. Nathan's face crumpled like wet cardboard. We never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? I asked. Just a little theft, just a small betrayal. We were desperate, Nathan said, and I could hear the tears in his voice. I lost my contracting business 6 months ago. We owed money everywhere. Credit cards, rent, car payments. Collectors were calling every day. I looked at this man who'd once been my little boy, the kid I'd taught to swing a hammer and read a level. The same hands that had helped me build a treehouse in our backyard were now shaking with shame. So you decided to steal from your father, I said quietly. We thought you had so much. Courtney finally spoke up, her voice sharp with resentment. This big house, all those antiques, Maria's jewelry just sitting there unused. You're one person living in a 4-bedroom house, while we can barely afford a 1-bedroom apartment. So you felt entitled to it. We felt like family should help family, she shot back. Instead of hoarding everything while your son struggles. Walter shifted by the door and I could see his jaw clench. He'd dealt with people like Courtney before. The ones who twisted desperation into justification, who made their victims feel guilty for being victimized. Family helps family, I repeated slowly, by asking, by being honest about problems, not by stealing and lying and plotting to forge documents. I pulled out a calculator and started adding up numbers. The stolen merchandise, $15,000. The fake renovation materials, $8,000. Legal fees for dealing with the mortgage fraud attempt, probably another $2,000. Total damages, $25,000. The number hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. $25,000, I said again. That's what this betrayal has cost me. Nathan was openly crying now, his shoulders shaking. Dad, we don't have that kind of money. We don't have any money. Then you'll get it, I said, surprised by the steal in my own voice. You have 30 days. 30 days. Courtney laughed, but it sounded more like a bark. That's impossible. Then I press charges for theft, fraud, conspiracy, and anything else my lawyer can think of. I looked directly at Nathan. 30 days to prove you remember what family actually means. The sound of Nathan's pickup truck leaving my driveway that evening was the last normal thing I heard for a month. What followed was a blur of phone calls, desperate visits, and the slow, painful process of watching my son either rise to the occasion or destroy himself, trying. Within a week, Nathan had taken a job with Rodriguez Construction, the same company that had bid against his failed business months earlier. The irony wasn't lost on either of us, but $15 an hour wasn't going to cut it. Nathan took a second job as a night security guard, working midnight to 8, then heading straight to the construction site. Walter kept me updated on his activities, partly out of friendship and partly out of old cop instincts. Boy's running himself ragged, Walter told me one afternoon. Saw him at the gas station yesterday, looked like he hadn't slept in days. I wanted to feel sorry for him, part of me did. But every time I walked through my house and saw the empty spaces where Maria's things had been, that sympathy hardened. Nathan started selling everything he owned. First went his truck, the Ford F-150 he'd been so proud of. He traded it for an old Honda Civic that barely ran. Then his tools, the good ones I'd given him when he started his business. Watching him sell those was like watching him sell pieces of his identity. Weekend landscaping brought in a few hundred more. I'd drive past job sites and see him bent over flower beds, sweat staining his shirt, even in cool October air. But the biggest blow came from Courtney. 2 weeks in, she filed for divorce and cleaned out their joint savings account, $3,000 that could have gone toward restitution. Instead, it funded her fresh start, away from the consequences of their crimes. She moved in with her sister in Dallas, Nathan told me during one of his brief progress reports. He looked like a ghost. Hollow cheeks, bloodshot eyes, hands shaking from exhaustion. Said she wasn't going to let my family drama ruin her life. The woman who had pushed him toward stealing from me had abandoned him the moment things got difficult. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt sad for the fool my son had been. As the deadline approached, Nathan's desperation became palpable. He sold his guitar, his television, his laptop, even his winter coats. The man who had once run a successful business was living like a monk, every possession sacrificed to restitution. On day 30, he knocked on my door at 7 in the morning. His beat-up Honda sat in the driveway, engine ticking as it cooled from another all-night shift. He looked terrible, thinner than I'd ever seen him, wearing clothes that hung loose on his shrinking frame. But his eyes were different, clearer. The shifty, guilty look was gone, replaced by something that might have been dignity. He held out an envelope thick with cash and money orders. $15,000, he said quietly. I know it's not the full 25, but I'll keep working until every penny is paid back. I took the envelope feeling its weight. It represented months of 18-hour days of selling everything he'd ever cared about, of choosing the hard path, when the easy one would have been to run like Courtney had. Dad, I know it's not enough, but I'll keep working until every penny is paid back. I stood in my kitchen that evening, staring at the envelope of cash Nathan had given me, while the weight of 30 years of marriage to Maria pressed down on my shoulders. $15,000, more money than most people could scrape together in desperation, but still 10,000 short. The house felt different now, quieter, as if holding its breath, waiting for my decision. I could hear the old grandfather clock Maria had insisted we buy 20 years ago ticking away the seconds. What would Maria do? I knew the answer before I'd finished asking. Maria had always been the merciful one, seeing the best in people, even when they'd shown their worst. She'd insisted we give Nathan another chance when he dropped out of college. She'd welcomed Courtney into our family despite my doubts. But Maria had also been nobody's fool. She'd believed in second chances and consequences, forgiveness, but not at the expense of justice. Walter knocked on my back door around 8, letting himself in like he had 100 times before. He found me at the kitchen table, the envelope in front of me like evidence in a trial. Rough day, he asked, pouring coffee. 30 days. He actually tried harder than I thought he would. Walter sat down, his cop eyes reading my expression. But I keep thinking about what you said and about patterns, about people who steal from family. That's true, Walter agreed. But I also saw that boy work himself half to death, sell everything he owned. That's not someone planning to do it again. Courtney's the one who really orchestrated this, wasn't she? From what I could see, yeah, she had the knowledge, the connections, the cold blood to steal from an old man. Nathan was just weak enough to follow. Walter leaned back, thinking. You know, in 30 years of police work, I learned there's a difference between justice and revenge. Justice is about making things right and preventing future harm. Revenge is just about making yourself feel better. That night, I made my decision. I called my lawyer and had him draw up papers, a restitution agreement for Nathan allowing him to pay back the remaining $10,000 over 2 years with interest, and criminal charges against Courtney for theft, fraud, and conspiracy. She'd shown no remorse, taken no responsibility, made no effort to make amends. The next morning, Nathan knocked at exactly 7 a.m., carrying only the weight of uncertainty. Dad, he started, but I held up my hand. I've made my decision. You're going to sign a restitution agreement. 2 years to pay back the remaining $10,000 plus interest. You'll also attend financial counseling. His face crumpled with relief. Thank you, Dad. I promised. And if you break this agreement even once, I press full criminal charges. No second chances after this. I understand. I looked at this man who'd once been my little boy, who'd made terrible choices but was trying to make them right. Nathan, I'm also pressing charges against Courtney. She orchestrated this whole thing and then abandoned you when it got hard. He nodded slowly. She deserves whatever's coming. As for us, I continued, we're going to rebuild this relationship the right way, with honesty, boundaries, and respect. How do I earn back your trust? Son trust isn't rebuilt with words. It's rebuilt with consistent actions over time. 6 months later, I was sitting on my back porch, watching Nathan replace the rotted boards on my deck, and for the first time since that terrible afternoon, my house felt like home again. The work he was doing now was different. Honest work paid for with money he'd earned at his construction job. Every Saturday morning, he'd show up with his tools and tackle whatever project needed doing. Not because he had to anymore, but because he wanted to. Because this was how a son helped his father. Hand me that level, would you, Dad? Nathan called out, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool March air. I passed him the tool, watching as he checked his work with the same careful precision I'd taught him 20 years ago. His hands were steady again, confident. These were the hands of a man who'd found his way back to himself. Nathan had kept every promise he'd made. The monthly payments arrived like clockwork, always on time. He'd found a small apartment near his job site, nothing fancy but clean and honest. He'd even started dating a woman named Sarah, who worked at the bank. A quiet, sensible woman who knew his whole story and didn't judge his past. Courtney had faced criminal trial and received probation with a restraining order, keeping her away from my property. She'd lost everything that mattered. Her marriage, her reputation, her career. "Dad," Nathan said, setting down his hammer and looking at me directly, "I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry. Not just for stealing from you, but for becoming the kind of person who could steal from you." I nodded, accepting the apology the same way I had the previous dozen times. Each time it sounded more genuine, more like a man taking responsibility rather than a boy making excuses. "The important thing is who you are now," I said, "and who you choose to be going forward." Walter joined us for dinner that evening, as he did most Saturdays. We sat around my kitchen table and talked about normal things. Work weather, the Rangers' chances this season. "You know what I learned from all this?" I said as we cleaned up dishes. "What's that?" Nathan asked. "That love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's just enabling." I dried my hands on the dish towel Maria had embroidered with bluebonnets. "Your mother knew that. She loved you enough to expect better from you." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "I wish I could tell her I'm sorry." "You can," I said, "every day with how you choose to live." As Nathan packed up his tools and headed home, I stood in my doorway watching his taillights disappear down Maple Street, the same street where this nightmare had started, where I'd discovered that the people closest to you could hurt you the deepest. But I'd also learned something else, that sometimes the people who hurt you most can also find their way back to being worthy of your love. Not through words or promises, but through the slow, patient work of proving they've changed. Family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, being honest, and earning your place. And looking back on this painful chapter of my life, I've learned that true love requires courage. The courage to set boundaries, demand respect, and sometimes say no to the people we care about most. God gave us wisdom not just to forgive, but to protect ourselves from those who would take advantage of our kindness. The hardest lesson I learned is that family doesn't give anyone the right to steal, lie, or manipulate. When God blesses us with homes, possessions, and security, we have the right to protect those blessings. But we also have the responsibility to offer redemption to those who genuinely seek it. Nathan's transformation taught me that real change is possible, but only when someone is willing to do the hard work of earning back trust. Courtney's choices showed me that some people will always choose the easy path over the right path. God sees the difference, and so should we. This true story from my life isn't unique. These grandpa stories happen in families everywhere. Maybe you've experienced betrayal from someone you trusted. Maybe you're struggling with setting boundaries with family members who don't respect you. If this true story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below telling me about your own experiences with family boundaries. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more grandpa stories that offer real wisdom for life's toughest challenges.